I'm here today with the two co-CEOs of Gensler, which most of you are probably very familiar with, but for those who aren't, Gensler is the largest architecture firm in the world. It has 6,000 team members worldwide with clients in over 100 countries. And Gensler's mission is to create a better world through the power of design. I'm here with Jordan Goldstein, who's been with Gensler for 28 years and has assumed the co-CEO role in January of this year, as well as Elizabeth Brink, who's been with Gensler, I think, 14 years and assumed the role of co-CEO in June of 2024. I'm thrilled to be here with both of you. Thanks for coming on Road to CEO.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes, great to be here with you, Will.
Did I get anything wrong in that intro? Or was that all?
I've been with the firm over 20 years, actually.
Okay, I think I found a typo.
It's interesting. I was a boomerang, so I left for about a year when my son was little and then came back. So that sometimes happens.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm always impressed with the longevity of employees. I know it, we'll get to that, but I'm a big believer that for services firms in particular, it's great to promote from within. It's great to grow talent from within. And it seems like Gensler does that either by design or naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this idea of, like you said, growing from within, really focusing on our people, helping them develop both in their skills and their, leadership skills, in addition to their design skills, is a really, really important part of things. I also think that we're finding as we grow and become more global and scale up, having that balance of longevity and people who really know the culture and how things operate and have those deep relationships, as well as newer people who bring fresh ideas, and a sort of hunger and enthusiasm. That balance is a really critical mix to our culture. So very important to have both things going on.
Yeah, with both of us having long tenures in the firm, Elizabeth plus 20 years, me 28 years. One of the things we really nurtured in the company is just being able for people to carve their own career path and figuring out what within the Gensler culture they're passionate about. For me, I started, right out of grad school, and started out, in one area, and I've really kind of reinvented that career probably 5-6 times. But it comes from really two things: one, a culture that allows it and nurtures it, but the other is great mentors within the company that are there, that have your back, that are willing to, advocate for you, willing to be a sounding board, when things all of a sudden may feel like you're coming across those crossroads. And I have found, for me, for Elizabeth, that also what helps is having that co-leadership model. We are co-CEOs, but that's not the only co in the Gensler world. We actually literally have 380 people in co-positions across the company, which is a wonderful way to grow, continue your career, keep your feet within the work, but also be involved in leadership and growth of the company.
Very interesting. So you've said a couple things I want to touch on. So when you talk about mentoring, is that a formal mentoring process or is it an informal mentoring process?
Across the firm, we have, I would say, both that go on. We've really realized that true mentorship can't be assigned. It can't be mandated from the top. It's really about those relationships that you build over time. However, we've also realized that in order to take that next step, make sure that every single person across the firm is getting the right kind of feedback, we do need some formal structures in place. So across the firm, every single person has a coach, and that coach provides them feedback on an annual and hopefully quarterly basis. That coach provides them not only feedback on their performance, but mostly on how to grow in the firm, and helps connect the dots for them. So we do have that sort of more formal process in place, but there's nothing like that group of people. We call it a board of advisors. Yeah. And throughout your career, you amass a different board of advisors that are, at least that's how I've done it, that provide different inputs throughout your career, different perspectives. And that really builds on what Jordan was talking about with the co-leadership model. We're really a partnership. Gensler as a firm is really a partnership, and we rely on our partners at all different stages to be providing that kind of mentorship, that kind of input, that kind of feedback.
It's funny, as Elizabeth and I have gone around the firm, literally traveled or around the globe in our time together as co-CEOs. We've been talking a lot about that, because you really across borders, across cultures, that notion of informal board of advisors, finding people around the organization that you connect with. It can be both the structured that Elizabeth's talking about, it can be the unstructured, but it's not just like around your immediate office, it's across the entire global platform that we have. So you could be passionate in aspects of design and find great affinity with, and you're sitting in Shanghai with a great designer, in Los Angeles, and being able to have that connection, and what we really try to do is make that easy, make that something that feels so second nature. And then that makes that connectivity and kind of the web, the network, within the firm feel smaller. It really tightens it up. So you feel like you have people that you can go to.
Yeah.
Very
One of the
interesting.
things that's been the most satisfying to me, just to build on what Jordan was saying, is to have not only been mentored, but to be able to turn around and mentor others and help them build those connections. And then to see them achieving levels of success and satisfaction and building things within the firm. It's an incredible feeling. And that's one of those things after Jordan's been here 28 years, I've been here 20 years, you start to see that. And, I literally just got goosebumps talking about it, because that is the future of the firm. That is what we're here to promote. And so when we can turn back around and do that and build that, it's incredible.
So let's talk about how Gensler has co-CEOs. Where'd that come from? How does that work? And you mentioned that there are other co-positions. So how does it work throughout the firm?
Well, maybe before we get to the co-CEO role, which the two of us are in, both of us are coming from other co-positions. Fortunate that both of us have been co-regional leaders. So, as a firm, to really kind of look at the fact that, we have, really a regional model. So there's 10 different regions across the globe. And Elizabeth, is coming from the Southwest. I'm coming from the Southeast US. Gave us a chance to be in a co-model before that, before the CEO opportunity. And, it even goes to our offices, around the globe. Our 57 offices are largely in a co-model as well, where there's two people that are leading the office. It's that notion of 1 + 1 really equals 3. It is having someone that is there as a sounding board, not to basically duplicate, or not from a redundancy standpoint, but also to allow, the growth of leaders, and recognizing that it's the day-to-day operations, sure, but it's also making sure that we are kind of charting a North Star path. Elizabeth and I both like to stay close to the work too. So the co-model as CEOs allows us to stay close in some particular client relationships globally as well.
Yeah, and I think that the co-model also, it really builds on the idea that everyone has their strengths and their spaces. We call it aces and spaces. And that by having two people, we can really push each other forward with our strengths, and make sure that we have clear eyes on where some of us may have spaces. And so we push each other, we question each other, we align. We're, as Jordan said, much better together than any one of us would be on our own. And it perpetuates throughout that partnership model. Yeah. That this is, again, we're moving this firm forward for all of us. It's not about any one person having the, quote, authority to make all the decisions. It's always about getting multiple perspectives into the room, understanding, from different people's lenses, and bringing that into the decision making. So the co-CEO is really a part of that. We can cover a lot more ground, and having that co-leadership throughout at the regional level in all of our leadership models. Our design teams are led, co-leadership models. Our client teams are led co-leadership models. Allows that to really filter throughout the organization. We rely on one another a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking that this really, I mean, it's clearly the opposite of kind of a dictatorship type approach.
Mhm.
It really sends a signal that one person is not just calling every shot, and I would assume that it would foster collaboration. It would foster, kind of the culture of collaboration that you might want to be fostering.
It really does. And, collaboration is, critical and integral to our DNA. And you think about the nature of design, it's inherently an optimistic and collaborative act.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we believe that it is not a solo act. It is really made richer by the voices of many around the table. So you go across any of our offices and you will see that, within the office environment, people around a table huddled up talking about ideas, whether they're with a client or just working as a team. And the co-model fosters that, and really shows that, even from a leadership standpoint, it is about collaboration. It's not one person sitting in the corner of the room, issuing out direction and decision. It's really about team and we versus I.
Yeah. Again, that's so critical to our culture as a whole, is building that sense of team and the we versus I culture.
Yeah, the other thing you said, which I think is interesting, is how it lets you keep your hand. I can't remember the phrase you
Yeah.
used, but it kind of keeps your feet planted in client work as well, because maybe
Does.
not. So I think is what you meant by that you don't have to spend 100% of your time focused on strategic planning and administrative functions and other things a CEO is doing, because you've got somebody to share the load, and then you're able to do client work as well as the strategic CEO work.
Yeah, it does. And I think for Elizabeth and I, one of the things that we love in this role is that it allows us to stay closer to the work and how work is getting done, in this industry, in this profession today. So it makes
Mhm.
that when we talk about the changing technology and the ever-changing tools in a designer's toolbox,
Yeah.
it actually makes it something we're seeing as well. It's not something we're hearing about, we're seeing it. And for client focus, being able for Elizabeth and I to be able to stay close some of these key client relationships globally, and understand, what are the needs and how can we really respond in a proactive, not reactive manner.
I think especially now, there's so much changing for our clients, so much around the world that they are really having to be agile and adaptive. And for us to be able to even understand how to lead our teams, to lead our organization, we need to understand what our clients are going through, what challenges they're facing. And so maintaining those relationships, understanding what they're trying to address really fundamentally in their work, what challenges we're seeing. It keeps us sharper. It keeps us understanding what's changing in the entire field and how can we stay ahead of that as well. And I think we're both just very passionate about the work, about the design work, about the strategy work, about solving the problems and getting back to that core, which is creating a better world through the power of design. That's where our passion is. And we've got to make sure that we're igniting that passion too with our clients.
Yeah. So there's a phrase I want to talk about. So for Gensler, what does it mean to be a one firm firm?
Mhm.
I've heard this a number of times. I think I've got some ideas about what maybe it means, but I'd love to hear what it actually means.
One firm is, I mean, again, core to our culture, core to our core values. When I think about it, there are sort of two aspects to it. One is the structural aspect, which is we don't compete structurally with each other around, profit statements, profit and loss statements, wins. We are financially and structurally, it all rolls up into one firm. What that really allows is a kind of behavior that is about we've got each other's back. We're always looking out for what's best for the project, for the client, not internally competitive, and really growing together. It goes back to the whole collaboration discussion that we've been talking about, but that goes pretty deep into our culture. That it's always looking out for each other. Always, what can I do to help? The Shanghai office. What can I do to help the Nashville office?
Mhm.
How can I help with this client? again, leaning on the best teams and providing the best resources for one another.
Yeah, the one firm mentality, it's so interesting how that pervades across our culture. It is from a design standpoint, it is getting to that, it is, we're one firm, one family across, the entire globe. So working on a project doesn't necessarily mean it's about just I'm working on a project in a particular location. It's really about how do I connect, the resources and the thought leadership that will make that project better from around the firm. And so one of the things that's really critical for us is when people are newer to the company, part of that early onboarding is introduction to what does it mean to be a one firm. And it's the things Elizabeth's saying. It's also the way we work in a collaborative manner. It's the way we connect the dots and recognize that, what, there are amazing resources and thought leaders around the firm that can add to the richness of what you're doing, rather just yourself solving the problem. And I got to say, for me personally, again, coming out of school, joining this company 28 years ago, it had been really kind of indoctrinated in, me in the kind of academic world of, oh, well, you go to a firm and you work for a couple of years and then you go to another firm if you want to grow and connect. And I found coming to Gensler right away that, there's this opportunity to really connect and build a network around the globe. So it is that one firm model. And it's like, as I found that my interests were changing and I was able to have great mentors like we talked about earlier, I was able to really navigate and find areas, okay, well, this is interesting over here. Can I plug in with this team and work with them and get connected? And all of a sudden, what was a journey that literally started, here in the kind of the East Coast area became very much a global journey. And that one firm connection allowed opportunities for me as an individual and also for kind of us as a larger team to create those moments of connection that all of a sudden, is like project work all around the world.
And one thing that sometimes we forget or take for granted is how much we as a firm actually really invest in this culture, this one firm culture. We're about to head out just in a couple days. All the partners from the firm get together. We really invest in bringing people together physically to build those relationships so that we have that foundation to build on. So we have a partners meeting every year in person. We have, what we call super meetings, people from across the firm globally coming together for 3 or 4 days to talk about ideas, to talk about design, to talk about where the future is going, building those relationships. We invest at a regional level in retreats for leadership or different groups. And so that coming together, that building of relationships is something that is so important that we will never stop investing in that, because it allows us then to really have a one firm culture, that people know people personally and can pick up the phone and call them to talk about an opportunity that may need to pull from across the firm. So that investment is a really key part of our firm and our culture.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think my own company has offices in Europe as well as on the East Coast, and we have done our best to have meetings in person, several times a year, because it should be a close-knit company. We're not a collection of contractors, that are, kind of coming and going. It's different. We don't do design work, but we do collaborative work. And so, we believe, we've seen the benefits of that ourselves firsthand from kind of coming together. And it's difficult. It's an expensive investment to make. I mean, I can only imagine how much it costs to bring all the partners together every year, and, but I'm sure that it's an investment that is both necessary and probably pays big dividends.
Yeah. I mean, to hear that you do that as well, and you see the benefits of it, for us, it's, we actually do it, for certainly, as Elizabeth mentioned, for this meeting we have coming up, but we also do it across the communities of our firm in different ways, at multiple gatherings throughout the year that bring these cross sections of talent together. And that cross-pollination, it does pay dividends. It pays dividends in client relationships and the research that we do in promoting and advancing some of the bigger missions around sustainability and being a leader from a technology standpoint. That works when people are connected and they're talking to each other, they're engaging with one another, and also not just within the company, but also having those dialogues with the client side and being able to really bring them in. everybody's an owner at Gensler. So you come in, every single person is an owner in this company, and we're a debt-free company as well. So that mentality of, you're an owner, you have a vested interest in this company, every voice matters, and we're operating with a strong business foundation, I think creates a level of comfort and engagement, which really helps across the globe.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
Go
I'm sorry.
ahead.
No. I want to hear what you had to say.
I was just going to say it also really reinforces that people first culture that we have. If we're willing to literally put our money where our mouth is, invest in our people, invest in bringing them together, people can see how much that matters and translates back into some of that longevity we were talking about earlier in the conversation. People seeing that investment, having those relationships, seeing where they can grow, and knowing that is something to strive towards. I remember the very first one of these cross meetings called the super meetings that I went to. I was just blown away by meeting people from the London office, from Costa Rica, from Shanghai, and getting to have those conversations with them. And it gave me a whole different perspective on what I could do in this company. And so it pays dividends beyond just the culture. It pays dividends in longevity and really in people understanding how much we are investing in our people.
So I want to hear your opinion on the future of office space and how employers can draw people back into the office. But there's a number of directions we could go here. And I think what I'd like to do is start with, how did COVID influence Gensler today? What was it like? You were both with Gensler during the lockdowns. What was that experience like working at Gensler when COVID shut the whole world down and forced everybody out of their offices? I would imagine it would be a scary time for reasons beyond what it would be for everyone else.
I got to say, we talk about this often because we were so proud of the immediate reactions. And, we went from, the 50 plus offices, overnight to, over 6,000 offices, because everyone's dining room table became, an office. And we are very fortunate to have a really strong technology team. So we were able to be cloud-based, before this all, went down. And so it was really a seamless, from a work production standpoint, it was seamless. And we've always had a goal, and Elizabeth and I talk a lot about this, especially now traveling around, is, what does it mean to be borderless? Well, certainly in COVID, we were borderless overnight, right? Because you all of a sudden, everyone's working together in different ways across the globe to get the project work done and to stay connected. And I actually think that there's, I remember we did about 6 months into COVID, we actually created really, I'll call it a lookbook. We called it homework because it was all the work that everyone's doing for clients, but doing it from the houses. And looking through it, and I look back on it still, it's some of the best design work that we had done, because we were figuring out new ways to create, new ways to be able to advance ideas. And you couldn't get on a plane, you couldn't go sit next to someone. So there's some legacies from that moment that are really still core to how we're working, today.
Yeah, it also brought us closer to many of our clients in a pretty fundamental way. So when we got through the initial shock of it all, that everyone was going through, so many of our clients started leaning on us to help them navigate even what questions to ask, particularly workplace clients. I think all kinds of clients. I think anyone, considering building buildings in a city, and are people going to be coming back? How are people going to be engaging with our urban spaces? Because we build places, but we build places for people. And so all those questions were immediately thrown up in the air, and our clients were dealing with it, our teams were dealing with it, and we were able to help walk them through just not the solution, but how to think through it, how to have those conversations. And it really shifted our relationship with many clients from being a service provider to being a real trusted advisor and partner. We were, we were texting with them, we were Zooming with them in their houses, in our houses, at all times of day, just how everyone was engaging at the time. And we've really been able to take that forward in terms of working with some of the clients in a different kind of way, helping them test and experiment and not being so worried about, is it the right thing, but is it the thing that's right for us? And really digging into their own organization and understanding that's what they have to be focused on rather than what the person down the street is doing. And I think that fundamental sense of trust and partnership and collaboration with our clients really deepened during that process.
Very interesting. So I have I had a different experience with COVID than probably most people because I had worked from home for 8 years or so prior to COVID. So from a work perspective, I was not, we had formal office space in Belgrade that, at the time, and but in the US, we were able to, we were already essentially working in a more distributed fashion.
Right.
So for me, it wasn't quite as disruptive. What is the current state of things today, though? What is, in terms of, previously, prior to March 2020, let's just say almost everybody worked in an office building. Now in September 2024, do you have numbers in terms of, kind of approximately what that situation is like now? How many, when we look at firms like, Fortune 500 companies, are most of them back to the office? Are they 50% back? What's the status quo at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things still going on, but fundamentally we know at this point that office and place and bringing people together for many businesses is a really important aspect. So that is happening. That is happening in a way that is a little different. We keep talking about the office as a destination, not an obligation, right? It used to be you had to go, to clock in, clock out, you have to be there. What we're really seeing, especially with a lot of the most innovative companies, most creative companies, is that they're using the office space to bring people together because people want to be together, just like we've been talking about, to collaborate, to engage, to learn. And so those are the companies that are they're actually reinvesting in office space, bringing it up to a new level where it functions differently for current needs. Where we're seeing a challenge is with all that office space that hasn't been updated in 15, 20 years, that is not such a compelling place for people to come into. And that's when you start to see the mandates of coming in and challenges with getting people into the space because that space is fundamentally not working for them. So we're really seeing that kind of bifurcation. I think there's still a lot of room to bring a lot of office space up to the kind of level where someplace people want to go and they're getting value out of that. We learned for our own organization how important learning is and mentorship, particularly for young people coming up in architecture and design. There is nothing like sitting next to someone who really knows their stuff and being able to ask questions, look over at what they're doing, not having to Zoom call them. And so for our organization, it's really fundamental to get people in. So again, from that mentoring and learning perspective.
Within the workplace environment, from a design opportunity standpoint, we really looked at, how to inject choice into the equation. So when you think about an office environment, throwing out old formulas and recognizing that for every company that we're working with, it's going to be very different. But how do we really, help them translate their brand and their mission into an environment that's, not just about workplace, but it's infused with hospitality. It's infused with strategic thinking about what does it mean to work a day in the life within that particular organization. And when you look at some of the projects that we are completing or that are on the boards now across our firm, you see that there's this real interesting rethink happening about choice in the workplace. And frankly, it's nowhere more apparent than even in our own offices. The space Elizabeth is calling in from right now, or down the hall from me, really trying to experiment on ourselves and test it out. We have found that if you create that right environment that has that mix of choice, that it does pull people back in. But it's not just choice in the spatial typologies, it's also choice in the amenitization of the workplace. In the way you think about how our services and food and beverage, and opportunities for solo work, for collaborative work, how is that all mixed in from a design standpoint where we're challenging conventional norms and trying to imagine different ways of bringing that heightened level of experience throughout an environment.
So, so for the future of office space, do you see people using the office space specifically for collaboration and for those types of things that they simply can't do solo? And then if they're not doing that type of work at that moment, maybe they would be working from other locations, working from home. What would the balance be in your opinion?
I think it really depends on the organization. And the real balancing point is not, is all collaborative work done in an office and all individual work done at home, but really what's the right mix for any kind of organization? Because we all know you don't spend one day doing focus work and one day doing collaborative work. And so the office spaces really need to flow between those. But it really comes down to how much is bringing people together key to the culture of the organization. What other mechanisms do they have for bringing people together? How much are they infusing brand and learning and culture and values into those spaces and places? We also see that a lot of people have wonderful setups at home. A lot of people don't. A lot of people, particularly young people who live in our cities, we found this in talking to our own people. It's hard to have a home space that can double as an office space where you don't have many roommates and we're in the middle of the heat wave and you might not have air conditioning. And so in order to provide an equitable opportunity for everyone to be working at their best, the office space also provides that for many people, particularly younger people in our cities where cost of housing is really high. So having that mix of spaces that we're seeing a lot of organizations need to provide both. So the balance is more organization by organization than a silver bullet that is the same for everyone.
Yeah, and here we are just stepping into the fall, having just finished a summer where we have interns in our offices, and so many of our clients have done the same. And being able for young people that are just exploring the opportunities for them in the professional environment to be in an office, to be in a setting where they're interacting with people in different ways, and being able to learn and to understand what the potential is, to be in a differentiated office environment. We also are seeing and talking to a lot of our clients that the office is not just a place for communal gathering or for that training and mentoring, but they are seeing a lot of people that want to actually do focused work for some of the reasons Elizabeth mentioned, that they want to be there for that. So it's not just about creating great communal spaces, but it's also creating the great mix of space types that allow for, you and I to be having a small conversation over here, or Elizabeth to be in the room 2 doors down that could handle the acoustics for us, a really great hybrid setting.
Very interesting. So I want to maybe change directions a little bit. As I mentioned to you, one of my relatives had a 30-year career at Gensler, and that's something that I've always been interested in as a CEO myself. How does Gensler foster this type of long-term employee relationship? Because as I understand it, that's not an uncommon career path for somebody to grow with Gensler. How do you get such long-term commitment out of team members?
I think, you mentioned it, the idea of growing with Gensler. I think that is a critical aspect of it. It's 30 years with opportunity to work on incredible projects, to work with incredible clients, to work with talent that comes in that challenges you and helps you thrive every day. and looking to grow people internally. We are always looking as we stretch and tap people for opportunities. We're always looking internally to see who could grow. We have a whole program about coaching and professional development where people can identify career paths that they want to be growing on. We have a lot of opportunities where people who are client relationships leaders will do videos or fireside chats going around the office, in person or virtual. So we do use the virtual tools, but really opening people's eyes to what those pathways could be. And I'll just give you a little anecdote about one of the reasons that I came to Gensler, and which has proven absolutely true, is I was looking I've been working for a few Black Cape architects, was looking at a role in a very high design, boutique architecture firm. And then looking at a role at Gensler. And as I was talking through it, it became very clear to me that at Gensler, it was a bit of a risk, but I could really stretch my own wings. I could chart my own path through the organization as they grew. And if I was at a traditional architecture firm, particularly one with, a singular design vision, I would be spending my time enabling that person's vision. And I think that anecdote has completely played out in my career, but plays out in a lot of people's careers at Gensler, because there's an incredible entrepreneurial spirit and so many people charting their own path and other people really helping to support that charting of their own path. And if you have a great idea, go make it happen. And that's a pretty exciting growth opportunity that I think really allows people to be spending 20, 30, even 40 years. I can't, tell you, the woman who sits right next to me has been with Gensler 45 years. She just celebrated her 45th anniversary. So, if it can really keep people engaged and growing and satisfied with their work for that long a period of time, there's got to be something there about that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, we really want, and we see it, is that Gensler is where you are for your career, not a job. And, I think about it, for me personally, one of the things that, got me really excited coming out of school and as a young kind of intern in this profession, but also, here at the company at Gensler, was the entrepreneurial spirit that really pervaded the company. I think it's rare to see kind of that, entrepreneurial spirit and an encouragement for an entrepreneurial mentality in a large organization. And I think that's one of the things that to this day is still very much, an integral part of what we do, and being able to really allow people to explore, things that they're interested in, things that they find others that have like minds on that they want to actually see pursue, whether that's research unrelated to client work, could be something with regards to technology or sustainability that's really very much tied to our vision and our mission, that they're encouraged to do that. And I think that also helps people think about it more than just the work that they're doing, that it allows passions to be unleashed in different ways. And as I mentioned, for me, as I mentioned earlier, there were 5 or 6 moments where, I probably had, those career crossroads, but it was those opportunities and certainly great mentorship, but it was also the opportunities to, explore. One of the things that I love, to do, and as several others at Gensler do, is teaching. Beyond the everyday work we do, be involved in academia and really help foster that bridge for the next generation to come down the path. And it's allowed us over the years, recognizing that people do want to actually get in the classroom, to really allow that to happen in a way that's beneficial. So for instance, we are now going into our 5th year with a program with the 7 accredited HBCU schools to be in the classroom each year. So we have over 50 people from Gensler that volunteer to be part of the classroom experience to really help the historic Black colleges and universities funnel great talent, to that next leap in the profession.
I think, Jordan, what you mentioned about Gensler as a place for your career, not just for a job, also really resonates in an important aspect. I just want to highlight, as a woman leader, and a woman who has a 16-year-old son and had that child while I was at Gensler, really understanding it's a family culture. And there is an incredible amount of respect for men and women and their family obligations, and particularly when they're starting young families and what that might mean and the choices that people make. I mentioned a little bit earlier that when my son was very little, I came back pretty soon after he was born. When he was very little, I boomeranged, which is what we call people who leave and then come back. I came back less than a year later. I realized I did not want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I had the support to make that choice, to work with my family to figure out what was going to work for us. And I think that the support for people with families is a really, really important aspect when you think about the longevity of people at Gensler, that during that high stress time for many people, we can be there, we can be flexible, we can allow people to work part-time if they need to, as long as they're meeting obligations. And it's really meaningful to people. And, I can now stand up and attest to the fact that that does not keep you from growing in your career at Gensler. And I keep saying to everyone, it's not about if you've taken time off or what you're not doing, it's about what you do and the impact you have when you're here and when you're in the organization. So I think that support and understanding of the real family culture has been very important to the longevity. And even if people leave, even other people boomerang and come back, that's part of that longevity, giving people the ability to flex within that.
I think that's a great point. So I'm curious if if Gen Z has had any impact on your client considerations for design, or if that has impacted Gensler internally. How has Gen Z entering the workforce kind of influenced things, if at all?
Well, I think the beauty of it is it adds to a multi-generational work environment. We certainly see it at Gensler, but we see it throughout our client relationships as well. I actually think it goes back to some of the things we were talking about the workplace environment and really creating that whole notion of choice. One of the things that's been something we've certainly experienced with Gen Z in the workforce, and I know many of our clients have as well, is that the opportunity to really think differently about your day, and that your day isn't a 9 to 5 day. And that there's a fluidity to that really needs to be woven into the DNA of a space. And what does that mean? It means that it actually creates a great challenge from a design standpoint to say, okay, you know what? If really the day in the life involves, not just 4 or 5 different experiences throughout the day, but it could be 20. How do you actually create that? One of the things that I love about, we heard from Gen Z in a couple of our office environments at Gensler, is that the need to really think about being outside during the day.
Interesting.
And it allowed us to actually explore, okay, well, you know what? Let's rethink our own environment. And here's an adjacent roof terrace that's not well utilized. Let's actually sculpt that into the office environment. So there's an indoor-outdoor component. Many of our clients now are looking at real estate solutions that have really integral outdoor components within in the architecture. And whether it's not just about roof, it's about what does it mean to be down, right above street level, where you can actually look out and feel engaged with the city and the urban area around you. What does it mean to actually think differently about a meeting room that actually opens up and goes outside, or the opportunity to actually have meeting spaces that are outside?
Yeah, I think Gen Z has in many ways pushed us to level up and not take things for granted. For example, they don't want to come into an office space if they're not getting anything out of it. So exactly as Jordan was saying, this spaces need to serve purpose and be compelling and have all the elements together that people want to be in. Same with our cities. People, Gen Z will go out and spend a lot of money and a lot of time and engaging with the city if it has those elements that they want, which are safe and compelling spaces where there's food and beverage and entertainment and sports all together. They are more than happy to engage, but we have to start providing them with the kind of spaces that they want to be inhabiting and that they want to be spending their time and effort on. Otherwise, they will tend to, not engage with them and they'll go somewhere else. So again, it's a leveling up. I also think there's a push for transparency from Gen Z as leaders, that Jordan and I were very accessible people. We like to be out with people in the offices, meeting people, having the happy hours, and really seeing what their concerns are. And I think that that's what Gen Z is looking for too in leadership. They want people who are accessible, who can listen, and feel that there's transparency going both ways.
I heard one of you mention a phrase about thinking about design through the lens of human experience.
Yes.
And is this kind of what that means, is to
Yeah.
think about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really kind of thinking about it through, a user experience mentality. How do different people utilize and can utilize a space differently or place differently throughout a day? And it's not just about workplace. We find that it really permeates everything that we do. It could be a new sports complex or a mixed use entertainment district in a city. Could be a new super tall tower, on a city skyline. How the human experience, for the users of that place or space, but it's also how does it plug into the fabric of a city or area that it's in, and what does it mean for those that are interacting, around what we are creating. One of the things that I love when we get into these great, complex design problems for these types of projects is you really map that out. You really start to think about, how do different people experience a place or a space, throughout a day or throughout an event, and think about their journeys and really start to map those journeys. And a great way for us to test out design, and this is the beauty of technology now, is to actually run simulations and see, not just theoretically, okay, well, so and so would probably want to use this space this way. Actually test it out and really run it. Would it work this way? And now certainly with the more experiential technology side of design, you can go into those spaces long before a shovel hits the ground.
I think understanding those users is really fundamental to this idea of the human experience, and innately that's what we want to be creating is really positive human experiences. So one of the things we're also doing is working a lot more closely with the end users, with community members, to understand what their expectations are. So it's not designers coming in and saying, we know what you need from a human experience, we know what you're expecting in your community, but doing a lot more work digging in with community members, with end users of office spaces, with end users of healthcare spaces, to understand where their pain points are, what their hopes and dreams are, what a great human experience would be for them. And so it's fundamental so that when we get to designing those personas, understanding those journeys, it's based on a lot of that human research, and we're designing with those users rather than designing for those users.
So we talked a little bit about technology, and I want to start with AI. Is there a role right now for AI at Gensler?
There is, and it's not just in design. It's also in how we are thinking about communication, how we are thinking about work process. What I find so interesting, and Elizabeth and I talk a lot about this now, is that you look at the architectural, real estate, and construction industry, and you think about it over time, and there really hasn't been massive disruption in this industry. But it's here, and it's fast coming. We're leaning into it. We see a lot of companies in the industry, the larger industry, that are a little timid or a little bit afraid. We're not. Our feeling is that the tool set that is available to our architects and designers around the globe is now expanded, and we should be experimenting and exploring with it now, every day in the work that we do. So I'll give you a couple examples. From a design standpoint, one of the things that AI integrated into our work process is allowing us to do is to really explore optionality, for spaces and space types and places, at a far greater capacity earlier, more upstream in the design process, which is great. But it means that we're able to interact with clients, and be more provocative with greater optionality using the new technologies in our work. But also, as I mentioned before, about simulation and ways to experiment and test out, it gives us a chance to really push the boundaries of those ideas further. And what I'm finding, and I think Elizabeth sees this as well, and it's really interesting because we hear this a lot from our teams now, is it's really allowing our teams to really explore, design in a way that feels very experiential, but much more on the creative side, and less, in a sense, on the task-driven side of getting something built as a model, all of a sudden rendered up. It gives us a chance to spend more energy on that creative side. It is, there's always been that innovation and entrepreneurial spirit inherent in our culture. We mentioned that earlier. But I think one of the things that we're finding is with the newer technologies in there, it also allows a level of, innovation and exploration with design, in a way that accelerates the process. So the idea, there's a whole notion of digital twins. You probably have heard the term, being able to think about, well, we're not just creating a model of what a building could be or what a space could be. We're actually able to create a digital twin, really test it out. But then once the space or place is built, to be able to use that digital twin to really track energy usage, to think differently about occupation and facility management, think about real estate and portfolio management, think about how design can change over time. So it opens this kind of cyclical nature of conversation around real estate that really wasn't there before.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in what Jordan was talking about with the data-driven and machine learning-based design, as well as the sort of generative AI, visual, creative side of things. And as he said, we're pushing, we're leaning in. We have some clients that are really focused on utilizing their data. They're very data rich, and helping us. We're working with them to help them utilize that information in really fundamental ways. So it changes from data into information into decision making.
Interesting. So I've got one other question I wanted to talk about, and this is one that I think has been core to Gensler for a long time. What does sustainable design mean? What does it mean in 2024? What does it mean in general? How do you guys think about sustainable design?
Well, so, as you said, it's excuse me, really fundamental to our ethos, to our core culture. We're all really passionate about it. I think one of the things that we're leaning into is utilizing the platform that Gensler has as the most influential design firm globally to transform the industry. So it's not just what are we doing sustainable on a single project, which is very important. And, we're always pushing creatively there. But even more important is what are we doing to transform the industry? So we've worked to create our Gensler product standards, our Gensler product sustainability standards across our entire organization, which really highlights those products, those materials that we use in all of our work that are the most sustainable. We've been working with manufacturers to get them onto that list, because once we've done all that work to get them listed as sustainable materials, sustainable elements that people can put into their projects, that gives them a much bigger platform, right? So a lot of the manufacturers are very happy to be working with us to become a part of this, to track some of their own metrics about their product sustainability. And we're rolling that out, and it's having a huge impact across the industry because of the scale of materials that we are able to specify. So really important transformative type of work with that kind of industry transformation.
And the good thing about what Elizabeth is saying, is it's really kind of a challenge to the industry to think differently about, what are the materials that are, looked at through, for project consideration. So really, if, past that filter, will it show up in the different architects and designers offices around the world, whether it's us or someone else's, and, setting those kind of minimum thresholds to cross. But it also translates more holistically into the project. So, what we're really happy about now is we're starting to see some amazing projects that are really taking sustainability all the way through. It's not just, great materials. It's thinking about sustainable systems. It's thinking about how we're using the site, the climate there to really enhance and be part of that ingredients for a successful building that's really giving back. Projects like Under Armour's new headquarters, a net zero project in Baltimore, working on projects, with some of our retail clients where they're thinking about multiple retail sites around the world where, they're knowing they're going to be doing a bunch of stores. Well, if you bake in the sustainability into the prototype, that when you're putting that in different locations, that just brings that to those locations. So it actually starts to play at scale.
Very interesting. Well, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a great discussion.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Were there any topics that you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
I think you covered a lot of great ground, and it's just the opportunity to talk through it for us both in this new role. To spend time with you has been fascinating and awesome. So thanks.
Well,
Yeah, we're really appreciative to be here. Thank you for your time.
well, thank you very much. Okay.